Here is another collection of articles, with the theme this time being futurism and technology. I combine the two because there's often some overlap. Some futuristic things actually did catch on, and others never did, and people back then often didn't know which path an invention would take. Also, like in the previous collections, I didn't include videos that I recorded before I got my better mic, because the sound quality was terrible, and I didn't feel like re-recording all of them for this, though I did re-record a few. I might do the others for the next collection, depending on the performance of this video. But anyway, let's get into it. Imaginary Trip from the Earth to the Moon. Midweek Pictorial, February 12, 1920. From the time that Jules Verne wrote his story of a journey to the moon, public interest has frequently been turned in that direction. It has seldom been considered, however, as anything but pure speculation. Impetus has, of late, however, been given to the subject by the rocket invented by Dr. Robert H. Goddard, Associate Professor of Physics at Clark University. His experiments have been carried on under the supervision and with the endorsement of the Smithsonian Institution, which is not given to chimerical or unscientific theories. Professor Goddard is primarily interested in obtaining photographs above the Earth's atmosphere, but many scientists believe that if that much can be attained, an extension of the journey to the moon might be possible. The subject is full of fascinating suggestion to people of an era which has seen so many apparent miracles performed by science. This interesting field of speculation has attracted the attention of Mr. Max Fleischer of the Bray Pictures Corporation, and has resulted in a series of pictures which, while imaginary, are alleged to be based on sound scientific theories. The pictures show an imaginary trip to the moon in a gigantic rocket. The energy of radium, if harnessed, could furnish ample motive power to reach the moon in the rocket described. The speed would accelerate as the friction of the Earth's atmosphere was left behind. The temperature would soon be 458 degrees below zero, but the vacuum envelopes about the rocket would neutralize that. At a distance of 213,000 miles from the Earth, the gravity of the moon would become paramount. For the remaining 27,000 miles, the fall to the moon would be fatally rapid, but this is retarded by a reversed power operated from the bow of the rocket. Always granting the possibility of radium being harnessed as motive power, it is alleged that no insuperable physical difficulties would intervene. Interior view of imagined moon rocket. Every appliance is contained for the health and comfort of the passengers. There are a radium power tank, radium-operated engines, oxygen tank, dynamo, electric heater, compressed food cabinet, water tank, and other apparatus. Even motorcycles have not been overlooked. They are for the exploration of the moon after the adventurers have landed on that satellite. Fanciful picture of rocket used in moving pictures, which, if the energy of radium could be utilized as a motive power, and who shall say that it may not yet be, might reach the moon. How the Earth would look if viewed from the moon. Our planet, as seen from the moon's surface, would always occupy the same position. Different parts of the Earth's surface would be seen at different times, but its place in the heavens would be the same. The rocket, which in theory could reach the moon, pictured as in full flight, cleaving its way through space as though it were a comet. The arrows represent the power of gravity exerted, respectively, by Earth and Moon. At a distance of 213,000 miles, the pull of the Earth would be exceeded by that of the Moon. An aviator circling the Earth 10 times could travel further than the distance between the Earth and the Moon, 240,000 miles, and could make the journey in 3 months. The diagram represents the distance to be covered. Tube containing 1 gram of radium. Its value is $170,000. This wonderful element will lose only 1/2 its energy after 2,000 years. If its power could be fully utilized by some radium-operated engine, there is alleged to be nothing in physical laws that would make a trip to the moon impossible. The Future of Radio, from Radio for All, 1922, by Hugo Gernsback. In this illustration are shown some of the future wonders of radio. Several of the ideas are already in use in an experimental way, and it should not be thought that the entire conception is fantastic. The illustration shows a businessman, let us say 50 years hence. To the right is a television and automatic radio phone. By means of the plug shown to the right of the machine, the man can plug in any city in the United States he desires. Then, by means of this automatic control board, he can select any number in that city he wishes, merely by consulting his automatic telephone directory. As soon as he has obtained his number, a connection is made automatically, and he not only can talk, but he can see the party whom he calls. At the top of the instrument is a loud talker, which projects the voice of the people, while on a ground glass in front of him, the distant party is made visible. This idea is already in use experimentally. Directly in front of the man, we see the radio business control. By means of another television scheme, right in back of the dial, the man, if he chooses to do so, can load and unload a steamer, all by radio telemechanics, or throw a distant switch, or if a storm comes up, look into the interior of his apartment, and then, merely by pressing a key, pull down all the windows. All of which can be accomplished by radio telemechanics, a science already well known. His business correspondence comes in entirely by radio. There is a teleradio typewriter. This electromagnetic typewriter can be actuated by anyone who chooses to do so. For instance, if we wish to write a letter to Jones & Company, Chicago, Illinois, we call up by radio that station and tell the operator that we wish to write a letter to the company. Once the connection is established, the letter is written in New York, let us say, on a typewriter, and automatically sent out through space by radio. Letter for letter, word for word being written by the other typewriter in Chicago. The letter, when finished, falls into a basket. Instead of sending our correspondence by mail, we shall then do our letter writing by radio. There is nothing difficult about this scheme, and as a matter of fact, it can be put into use today if so desired. We have all the instrumentalities ready. Going further, we find the radio power distributor station that sends out power over a radius of 100 miles or more. This radio power may be used for lighting and other purposes. In front of the bridge, we see a number of people who are propelled by radio power roller skates. On their heads, we see curious three-prong metallic affairs. These collect the radio power from a nearby railing, which, however, is not in view, and which they do not touch. The power is sent through space from the rail to the three-pronged affair, and then is conveyed to the skates, which are operated by small electric motors. These roll at the rate of 15 to 20 miles an hour, and there is no visible connection between the wearer and the radio power distributor. We next see the crewless ships controlled by radio. This has been made possible today. Indeed, several US battleships have already been maneuvered over a considerable distance by radio. The time will come when we can direct a ship across the ocean without a human being on board. Future freight will be sent in this manner. The ship, every 10 minutes, gives its location by radio, so that the land dispatcher will know at any time where the ship is located. Collisions are avoided by a number of instruments into details of which we need not go here, but which have already been perfected. Collision with icebergs also is avoided by thermocouples, which divert the ship away from the iceberg as soon as it enters water which has been cooled below a certain degree. The radio-controlled airplane works similarly to the radio-controlled ship, and it will be possible to control such airships very readily in the future. As a matter of fact, John Hayes Hammond Jr. in this country has done this very thing. Radio-controlled airplanes will play a great role in the next war. It is a mistake to think that radio is only good for the distribution of intelligence. As the illustration shows, the great uses of radio have not been touched upon as yet. Architectural development of New York. A Russian idea of what is going to happen to us. Drawings by Dobuzinski. Vanity Fair, April 1924. Fifth Avenue. New York has always prided itself on its main shopping thoroughfare, known the world over as the Avenue. But apparently even this is doomed to succumb before the inevitable congestion of the future. Monsieur Dobuzinski, the imaginative creator of the drawing above, has had much experience in scenic design, having set 10 plays for the Moscow Art Theater. His architectural forecast shows theatric possibilities in the treatment of what he imagines will be the upper floor of a great city, the lower levels of which have become completely submerged by the housing demands of an ever-increasing population. Tiffany's, the New York Public Library, the Union Club, all lie deep down in the ditch, the cross struts passing above them. The steel cranes will facilitate traffic by lifting out stalled motors and fainting citizens. Central Park. One of the constant battles waged in the council chamber of Manhattan is due to repeated attempts on the part of someone to build something in Central Park. Every time the subject is broached, a corps of sturdy park defenders spring into action and fights the proposal tooth and nail. Let the object be as laudable as you will. A civic center, a temple of music, a public picture gallery, it matters not. The park preservers simply will not have it. But according to Monsieur Dobuzinski, these staunch playground patriots are doomed to overwhelming defeat. 100 years from now, he thinks, this is all there will be left of Central Park. And do not deceive yourself. What you see portrayed is not the park itself, dear no. The actual park lies at the bottom of that well in the center. It is circular, with a diameter of 30 feet. Going up for air. In the city of the future, the inhabitants will all arrive underground and be escalated to the surface. This picture, supposedly taken at an early hour when the first of the great swarm of human ants are beginning the daily toil, represents the subsurface approach at 5th Avenue and 42nd Street, underneath the public library. Some tremendous mechanism operates the huge moving staircases, delivering human beings in carload lots at the rate of 2,000 per minute. At night, they are shot into the various subways through gleaming chutes of polished steel. It will be a gay life if we don't weaken. A Highway on the Rooftops. Popular Science Monthly, July 1927. Our artist pictures here an ingenious new plan for solving New York City's traffic problems by a remarkable system of rooftop boulevards running more than 16 miles in a straight line through the heart of the city. Bridging of cross streets for free movement of traffic. Moving platforms for speedy and convenient passenger service. Healthful elevated playgrounds for children. Underground railway freight service. These are some of its outstanding features. The proposed system, conceived by John K. Henkin, a New York engineer, has been approved by a number of eminent engineers and city planners. They say it is entirely feasible from an engineering standpoint. It calls for a series of buildings of uniform 12-story height extending from the lower tip of Manhattan Island to Yonkers, connected by bridges at all cross streets. Sub-basements would contain 4 railroad tracks for freight service as well as conduits and sewers. The first floor, arcaded to form a 10-foot sidewalk, would be devoted to stores and shops. Through the second or main floors, continuous moving platforms for free passenger service would run at graduated speeds ranging from 3 to 20 miles an hour. These platforms also would be carried on bridges over cross streets. Other lower floors would be occupied by retail shops, restaurants, theaters, and so on. The upper floors would be used in business sections for offices, in residential districts for apartments and studios. Northbound and southbound boulevards on the rooftops would be separated by a protected parkway, reached by elevators. Other elevators in every block would carry motor cars from the street level to the elevated boulevards. Science in New Apartment House Deluxe. A wonder apartment for the city dweller, with lakes, tennis courts, and sunken gardens. Science and Invention. January 1922. In Cleveland, Ohio, there is a remarkable apartment house built somewhat on the style of a modern hotel, which is the envy of all apartment dwellers who have seen it. The cooking is done in a centralized kitchen for all the apartments. The soiled dishes are washed in one of the kitchen departments, and each apartment has an icebox supplied through cooling pipes from the basement. The present illustration shows some of the features of this modern apartment house deluxe, and also some of the newest ideas suggested for a gigantic apartment dwelling, which it is proposed to build in New York City. The architects and engineers who have designed this beautiful city dwelling have thoroughly worked out their plans so as to provide a very spacious courtyard covering several city blocks, while the building itself has been designed to run around this spacious tract of land. In this way, excellent ventilation and daylight for all the apartments is obtainable. The courtyard, if so we may call this spacious enclosure, is arranged to contain tennis and squash courts, a lake suitable for boating in the summer and skating in the winter, shady walks with flowers, bushes, and shrubs leading to a large sunken garden, besides a swimming pool, a baseball diamond, as well as sufficient area for small gardens, so that Mr. and Mrs. apartment dweller may have fresh radishes and lettuce right out of the garden in season. But the architectural features do not stop here, because the present plans include a proposed moat or wall, such as those surrounding the old feudal castles, with a canal or channel of water separating the street from the courtyard. A day in the wonder apartment of tomorrow. You awake in the morning and find that considerable snow has fallen overnight. Funny, you think, that the room should be so comfortable and not freezing cold. But the automatic thermostat connected to the radiator hidden in the wall has served to keep the room temperature up to a suitable point through the night. There is no ice on the outer window or storm sash, due to the fact that air at a suitable temperature constantly circulates between the two windows. The windows are also provided with an electric opening and closing device, which can be operated from the bedside by the pressure of a button. It is as quiet as if one were in a tomb. Yes, one may sleep very peacefully without hearing any noises through partitions, floors, or ceilings from adjacent apartments, thanks to the cork and felt linings between the floors, partitions, and walls, which absorb any sound which would otherwise be transmitted. Handy reading lamps are found on each bed, while a portable telephone which can be plugged into a receptacle by means of a flexible cord in any room of the apartment is found on a table between the beds. Every 5-room apartment has 1 bathroom, while 8 to 10-room apartments have 2 bathrooms. Hot and cold water is supplied to each bathroom, as well as iced and ozonated drinking water, which is therefore thoroughly germ-proof besides having a sparkle all its own. Of course, all the usual electrical conveniences such as curling irons, etc. are provided in the bedroom, or these may be used in the bathroom when plugged into receptacles provided for the purpose. When we come to the dining room, we are agreeably surprised at the absence of cooking odors, always so noticeable in the average small-size city apartments. An electric ozone generator fitted into the wall and covered by a small grill has obliterated any odors. You step to the telephone in the hall, or perhaps you have already phoned from your bedroom upon arising, and order your breakfast from the central kitchen in the basement. At the appointed time, your dumbwaiter alarm sounds, and you pass through the electrically operated swinging door into the kitchenette, shown in the plan view of the apartment herewith. By pressing a button with your foot as you approach the swinging door from either side, the door, operated by electromagnets under the floor, opens just ahead of you, so that the maid can carry a tray full of dishes without picking her way through it, and possibly get a crack on the elbow that may cause her to drop the dishes. The dining room table is fitted with several electrical sockets into which may be plugged a coffee percolator, an electric hot dish, or waffle iron, etc. The victuals may be carried into the dining room, or else wheeled in on the specially devised tea wagon shown. After the meal, the soiled dishes are placed in a foot-operated metal container containing a deodorant, and these are then placed in the dumbwaiter and dispatched basementward, to be washed in the gigantic kitchen and dishwashing department provided for the several hundred families who make this apartment house their home. One thing that tickles you all the way through is the fact that the temperature is so even in all the rooms and halls, thanks to the automatic thermostats, which control the amount of heat distributed by the radiators. Another surprise that impresses you is that valves are provided on each radiator so that when the warm weather arrives, you can close the steam valves and open the brine pipe valves, allowing the cooling brine solution to circulate through the radiator instead of steam or hot water, which will keep the apartment at a prearranged and livable temperature on the hottest days. You also discover that the so-called kitchenette contains a handy sink as well as hot and cold water and ice water besides. Set in the wall alongside the dumbwaiter door is a nifty iceless refrigerator, so that you do not have to worry about the Iceman coming around every day. A cooling worm made of pipe is all that you see, and it is white with ice. Cooling brine supplied through pipes from the basement refrigerating plant keep this worm cold at all times, and by placing a pan of water in one of the compartments, you may freeze a small cake of ice so as to provide cracked ice for drinks, table service, etc. Bottles of near beer and champagne, can be kept cold in this refrigerator as well as fruit that you may want to keep from spoiling. When the maid who has charge of your section and floor of the apartment house arrives to clean the rooms, you expect to see her use an electric vacuum cleaner, but all she carries with her is a piece of rubber tube which she attaches to a pipe opening provided in the baseboard of each room. You learn later that a large vacuum cleaner plant installed in the engine room in the basement keeps up a constant suction or vacuum through pipes running to every room in this huge dwelling, so that rooms can be cleaned at any time, and there is no dust or dirt to handle. When noon arrives, we hear a chime strike and perhaps wonder how the superintendent manages to keep all the clocks in the hundreds of apartments exactly right. Upon inquiry, it devolves that the clocks are electrically wound and corrected from a radio station on the roof of the dwelling. Moreover, we are told that this radio station is equipped for transmitting as well as receiving messages, including the radio time signals sent out from the great government station at Washington at 12 o'clock noon and 10 o'clock p.m. at night. In the evening, after an excellent dinner cooked by expert chefs in the great kitchen below stairs, we adjourn to the living room or parlor. If we wish to play the piano, we find that it is electrically operated, and that all we have to do is to manipulate the usual tempo and other control keys. Later, we listen to a selection from the opera Carmen played on the electrically operated phonograph, and tiring of the records at hand and wishing to learn the latest news of the day, even fresher than that gleaned by reading the 15th edition of the Evening Glybe while dashing homeward in one of the airplanes belonging to the fleet operated by the apartment house management, we switch on the Magnavox radio loud talker, which act has caused a signal to drop on the switchboard in the radio room atop the building, and we are immediately switched on to the powerful audio amplifier receiving set, and we hear the latest news, interspersed with snappy jokes and songs, via radio telephone, from the powerful radiophone station WJZ, located at Newark, New Jersey. The apartment house hospital is always at our beck and call, in the event that someone in the family is taken ill or receives an injury. Physicians and surgeons are constantly in attendance, as well as trained nurses. The hospital is equipped with the very latest type of X-ray machine, by means of which instantaneous photographs can be taken through the thickest part of the body. And by means of this ultra-powerful high-voltage X-ray apparatus, treatment can be given for cancer and similar ailments which require X-ray therapy. The hospital laboratory also contains, among other up-to-date equipment, a powerful radium outfit, whereby cancer and similar afflictions can be given the proper treatment. Convalescents find the roof garden and sun parlor just like heaven, with fragrant flowers and as much fresh air as they may need. The weaker persons taking their sunbath under glass roofs, while the stronger ones may refresh themselves in the open-air roof garden. Predicts pyramid cities for America. Popular Science Monthly, January 1922. Back to the style of the pyramids is soon to be the motto of architects who plan American skyscrapers, according to one of the most noted among them, Harvey W. Corbett, co-designer of the beautiful Bush Terminal building in New York City. A forecast of the weirdly artistic, mountainous skylines of future American cities is already to be seen in several buildings lately constructed in Manhattan. When the United States supports the 500 million inhabitants predicted by statisticians, and our cities have become more vast and crowded than they are now, it will be more necessary than ever to build skyscrapers, so that light and air can reach office workers and people in the streets below. Already, laws passed in some cities require that the upper stories of all such buildings shall have setbacks, at an angle determined by each particular section of a city. This angle is found by drawing an imaginary line from the center of the street to the height allowed the first terrace in that building zone. All other stories added to the structure must not extend beyond that line. Suppose, for instance, that the street is 100 feet in width, and building laws require that no building shall be higher than the street is wide, unless the front is terraced. Then the diagonal line of an imaginary triangle constructed with a base of 50 feet and a vertical leg of 100 feet would dictate the slope of the pyramidal front. It will be seen, therefore, that in cities having many high buildings, the latter will mount step by step, always receding from the street. Quoting Mr. Corbett, "These aerial terraces will suggest the construction of roof gardens, tennis courts in the clouds, open-air theaters, Greek temples in the sky, and green terraces encircling apartment houses. New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and other great cities will look like Babylon with its hanging gardens." Architects are now picturing the probability of each city block being taken up with an enormous pyramid of marble, granite, or terracotta. In the immense buttresses at the corners, defining the lines of the edifice, would run escalators that would take the place of the usual elevators. These radical changes are not so far-fetched as they may at first seem, Mr. Corbett remarks. Equally as phenomenal architectural changes have come in the past 20 years. Scarcely a well-known building standing in New York today was here 20 years ago. Even modern skyscrapers are sacrificed to the movement of business, and a significant thing about 20th century architecture in this country is that it is not meant to be permanent. I believe that American cities will gain in architectural harmony, and that our business districts will be far more restful to the eye and nerves as a result of the uniform height of the terraced structures that, I predict, will become familiar in every metropolis. The Future Airliner, as pictured by Eddie Rickenbacker. Popular Science Monthly, July 1922. The commercial airliner of the future will probably resemble closely the airplane pictured here, especially if intended for supermarine travel, writes Captain Rickenbacker, first American ace during the war and now head of his own motorcar company. Radical as the design may seem, it will be observed that in its essentials, in cantilever wings, hull profile, retractable chassis, the airplane is simply an embodiment of engineering practices already sanctioned in America and abroad. This superliner of the skies for passenger and freight transportation, which Captain Rickenbacker predicts will be realized with the passing of but a very few years, will be a giant monoplane, perhaps 300 feet from wingtip to wingtip. The motors will be of approximately 1,000 horsepower each, several motors to a unit, and each unit driving a great propeller with 3 blades from 15 to 20 feet long. The motor units will be set in the wings, which will be very thick, from 5 to 10 feet on the leading edge, and will be of internally braced cantilever construction. The fuselage will be in the form of a boat, but landing wheels that draw into the body during flight will also be provided. This will enable it to alight on land and water. To hit the moon with a rocket. Popular Science Monthly, April 1920. Professor Goddard of Clark College has invented a rocket that operates on entirely new principles, and that would make it possible to hit the moon. It has been estimated that with ordinary rockets, it would take 14,290 million tons of explosives to reach the moon. Professor Goddard's rocket requires only 602 pounds, because the gases are discharged not at the usual rate of 1,000 feet a second, but at 7,000 feet. The fastest projectile hurled from a rifle has a velocity of less than 3,000 feet a second, from which it is seen what a marked improvement Professor Goddard has made. The total charge of explosive required to reach the moon would be 17 tons, equal to the total weight of ammunition discharged by a battleship when it shoots off all its guns at once. In other words, Professor Goddard's improvement at a single step transfers the enterprise of hurling the missile to the moon from the class of impractical dreams to the domain of comparably simple tasks. The Movie House of Tomorrow, a vast sectored amphitheater. Popular Science Monthly, May 1922. Concentric circles of seats divided into sectors, each sector facing the center of a mammoth amphitheater and provided with its own screen. Such may be the motion picture house of the future, as predicted by far-sighted motion picture engineers. Pictures for all sectors will be screened from one film. Seats will be designed by experts in correct posture to promote comfort and health, and will fold automatically as soon as vacated. All the master sounds, music, speech, and noises incidental to the film story will be produced in the acoustic laboratory of the theater adjoining the projection room. These sounds will be delivered automatically in synchronism by direct connection with the film through a telephone attached to the auditor's chair. One-act drama broadcast by radio. New step in television shown. Exhibitors Herald, September 22nd, 1928. Schenectady, New York, September 18th. Transmission of drama by radio is now a reality. This new development of television was demonstrated last week when a version of The Queen's Messenger, J. Hartley Manor's one-act drama, was broadcast from WGY, the picture and voice being transmitted simultaneously on separate radio channels. The simplified and portable television transmitter or camera was developed by Dr. E.F.W. Alexanderson, consulting engineer of General Electric and chief consulting engineer of RCA. At the same time that this feat was being accomplished, permitting the reproduction of the playlet in homes distant from the scene of action, the program requiring about 40 minutes, it was emphasized by Martin P. Rice, General Electric's broadcasting manager, that it will be a long time before television can be offered to the public as a practical and finished production. The camera consisted of 3 units, a cabinet containing a 24-hole disc and a 1,000-watt lamp as a light source, and 2 smaller cabinets each housing a photoelectric tube with amplifier. All 3 cabinets were mounted on tripods, enabling the operator to raise, lower, or tilt the light source to suit the height or position of the performer. In the presentation of the Queen's Messenger, 3 cameras were used, a camera for each of the 2 characters and a third for the introduction of props and other visual effects. The actual adaptation of the television apparatus to the play was made by Mortimer Stewart. The apparatus as yet is crude and admittedly inadequate. For example, only the heads of the actors can be shown, and the image in the television receiver is the red of the neon lamp, this being the only device at present which has the necessary simplicity. The drama was presented in one of the studios of WGY. The director, standing between the 2 character cameras, governed the radio output by means of a small control box with 2 knobs. With one of these knobs, he brought any one of the cameras into the circuit, depending upon which character was speaking. A third transmitter was utilized for hands and props. For example, when the woman of the play offered to pour some wine for the messenger, the third camera picked up the image of the woman's hands with bottle and glass as she poured the wine. Keys, a ring, a pistol, and many other props were thus introduced. To keep the actor within the small area in which the eye of the pickup camera might find them, each actor worked in front of a white screen, a background which gave definiteness to his features, and borders were established within which he had to stand. The Queen's Messenger has but 2 characters. The woman was played by Izetta Jewell, while Maurice Randall was cast for the messenger. Joyce Evans Rector and William J. Taniski doubled for their hands, and at the third transmitter or camera handled the various props. Dr. Alexanderson also exhibited recent television developments of his laboratory, including apparatus for the projection of a 12-inch image on a screen, 10 feet from the projector. In order to avoid any widespread misunderstanding, it should be made clear at the outset that the television that will be exhibited is transmitted over a short wire line, and that we are not prepared to transmit television of the same quality over any considerable distance, he said. It will be some time yet before it will be available as an entertainment for the general public. Inventor promises disc record movie shows for the home. Film projector runs like a talking machine. Popular Science Monthly, April 1923. What Edison did with the talking machine, what Bell did with the telephone, what Ford did with the automobile, see Francis Jenkins, inventor of Washington, D.C., now proposes to do with the movies. By means of an ingenious prism projecto apparatus growing out of his study of prismatics, a study by which, incidentally, Jenkins worked out the principle of radio transmission of photographs, the Washington inventor has perfected a movie record machine that, he declares, will put movies in the home, along with the talking machine, the telephone, and radio, and at a cost within the average man's pocketbook. For some time, leaders in the motion picture industry have believed that the greatest future use of movies would be in the home. But to meet the requirements of this field, it was necessary to devise a projecting machine as easily managed as a talking machine, with records just as simple in form. This, Jenkins believes, he has done. With his disc record apparatus, he hopes to make available to stay-at-homes the greatest motion picture productions. In construction, the new home movie machine is surprisingly simple. To operate the phonograph-like disc containing the movie film, a mechanism like that of the modern cabinet phonograph is used. The miniature movie is projected on the inside of the hinged cabinet cover. One of the first problems encountered was that of devising a small compact disc that would hold the thousands of pictures necessary for one reel of movies. This Jenkins accomplished in a truly ingenious way. First, the opening pictures of a reel were pasted in order around the rim of a paper disc about the size of a large disc record. Naturally, one disc accommodated comparatively few pictures. So Jenkins arranged the succeeding pictures of the reel on other similar discs, which he placed in order beneath the first one. By means of a radial slit, each disc in the series slightly overlapped the one beneath it, so that when the pile of discs was rotated with a guide wheel running between the layers of paper, the effect was to produce a continuous spiral strip of paper and pictures. This arrangement, somewhat like a spiral spring, thus produced a continuous sequence of pictures. As the discs were run off, the thumb-like frame of the guide wheel bent back the used discs so as to expose the succeeding pictures. Then the problem was to provide a means of projection, including an intermittent mechanism to produce for the unaided eye the effect of one continuous moving picture on the screen. This Jenkins was able to solve through his knowledge of prismatics. On each side of the image he desired to project, Jenkins placed a prism that caught the light and threw it on the picture. From the picture, the light passed upward through a lens to two oscillating mirrors, which in turn projected it on the screen. A user of the disc movie machine simply turns on the electric current that drives the small motor, places on the rotatable table his disc record that contains the reel of the film, switches on the projector light, then sits back to enjoy the show. The thumb-like guide wheel arrangement follows down the spiral formed by the overlapping discs. The oscillating mirrors pick up the images thrown upward by the prism arrangement, and the moving pictures are projected in miniature. Will gyroscopic wheel shatter speed records? Popular Science Monthly, April 1923. Down the track of a motor speedway, a wheel 14 feet high whirls at such a dizzying speed that racing automobiles traveling at top speed, 115 miles an hour, seem almost to stand still. So fast does the giant wheel travel that the details of its design can scarcely be distinguished. This is a possibility prophesied by Professor E.J. Christie of Marion, Ohio, for an amazing gyroscopic unicycle of his invention, now being constructed in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The 2,400-pound 14-foot model of the speed wheel is almost ready for a trial spin, and Christie confidently predicts that it will develop a speed of at least 250 and possibly 400 miles an hour. In design, the strange vehicle resembles a giant bicycle wheel with an exceptionally long hub, at the end of which supporting spokes are fastened. Attached to the axle on each side of the center are 500-pound gyroscopes designed to rotate at a speed of 90 revolutions a minute, a speed sufficient to maintain equilibrium. Suspended from the axle by a frame, the upper end of which supports the driver's seat, is a 250 horsepower airplane motor, the power of which is transmitted to the axle through a friction clutch, 3-speed transmission, and jack shaft. An additional chain drive in the center of the axle connects the engine transmission with the gyroscopes. The machine is controlled and operated like an automobile from the operator seat immediately above the axle. Here, the driver is saved from swinging about the axle by the steadying weight of the engine slung below. How can such a strange vehicle be turned, you may ask? This problem Professor Christie has solved in a unique way. By means of the steering wheel, he shifts the position of the two gyroscopic flywheels on the axle to the right or to the left. When the center of equilibrium is thus shifted, the unicycle immediately turns in its course, without tilting, the degree of turn depending upon the distance the gyroscopes are shifted. In other words, the farther the shift, the shorter the turn. The wheel is supplied with a 7-inch rubber tire, the manufacture of which proved a problem in itself. Pressure resistance was found to be so great that several attempts were made before a strong enough tire was produced. The new gyroscopic unicycle is not the first machine of its kind Professor Christie has produced, although it is by far the most pretentious. He first used a gyroscope to demonstrate the rotation and momentum of the Earth. France to England through 31-mile tube. English Channel Tunnel, longest underwater, a dream for 120 years, nears reality. Popular Science Monthly, November 1923. The 2-page drawing reveals graphically the proposed submarine tubes, said to be the most ambitious ever undertaken. The tunneling would be accomplished not by digging from both ends as engineers always have done before, but by sinking 8 shafts in the center of the channel and burrowing from their bases toward the French and British shores. Diggings would be lifted out of the shafts and thrown overboard into the sea. The British end of the proposed tunnel under the English Channel, which it is estimated would shorten the journey between London and Paris from 8 to 6 hours. The waterlock permitting flooding of the tunnel, together with the dipped ends of the tunnel, could render it useless in event of a Franco-British war. Diagrams illustrating the construction of the 2 tubes that compose the tunnel, and their position under the channel. Note also that where the water deepens, the depth of the tunnel lessens. The distance between the tunnel and sea level is thus always about 260 feet, a depth that is deemed amply safe. New York and New Jersey officials inspecting the new Hudson River vehicular tunnel. The diameter of this great submarine tube, which is nearly 29 feet, makes it easily the world's largest tunnel. The proposed channel tubes, although much smaller in diameter than the Hudson River tunnel, would be many times longer. How a rocket barrage might shower molten destruction in the sky. Popular Science Monthly, November 1924. Rivaling the widely discussed death ray of H. Grindle Matthews, a terrific new weapon of offensive and defensive warfare recently has been developed in the form of a death rocket, designed to throw out a flaming shower of molten metal miles above the Earth's surface. The inventor is Ernest Welsh of North Ferriby, East Yorkshire, England. From demonstrations and descriptions of the new war machine by Mr. Welsh, our artist has drawn the dramatic picture above, showing how the defenders of a city might repel an attack from the air by raining flaming molten pellets on the invaders. The inventor's recent experiments with medium-sized rockets is said to have proved that each shower, bursting high in the air, can cover an area of 100 square yards and can ignite any object within that region. The experimental rockets, it is claimed, can climb to a height of 5 miles. The rocket contains a destructive charge of 700 pellets, a regulating charge, a detonator, and a propelling charge. When it is to be sent aloft, it rests in a diagonal launching cradle, somewhat similar to those used for ordinary skyrockets. When the fuse is ignited, the propelling charge sends the rocket soaring out of its cradle. Thereafter, at regular intervals, it is given fresh impetus by the bursting of additional successive charges. For use as defense against raiding aircraft, the inventor says that batteries of the rockets could be shot upward in the form of a barrage. The pellets quickly burn themselves out, he adds, so that the rockets could be used over a city. Mr. Welsh is at work on a modification of the same weapon that can be fired from airplanes or airships, falling about 300 feet before bursting. Wall Street, an amazing machine. How mechanical and human cogs turn the wheels. Popular Science Monthly, July 1926. Few laymen probably understand the intricate machinery of the stock market, or the amazing speed with which it operates. These pictures, which show the details of a typical transaction, present a comprehensive, understandable explanation of this wonder of our financial system. In a broker's office in San Francisco, 1. A customer writes an order to buy 100 shares of stock at the market price, shown on the Translux, a glorified stock ticker above his head. The broker passes the order to his telegraph operator, 2, for immediate transmission to New York over his private wire, 3. The order is received almost instantaneously in the telegraph room, 4, at the office of a correspondent in New York, and the exact time of receipt is stamped upon it instantly. The telegraph operator turns over the order immediately to an order clerk, 5, who establishes telephone contact with the broker's booth, 6, on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, 7, merely by pressing a button. When the clerk in the booth, B, receives the order, he signals the broker, who is on the floor of the exchange, by means of the electric annunciator board shown in upper right-hand corner of picture. The broker purchases the stock required at one of the posts, G, on the exchange floor. Listed stocks are divided among 29 such posts, about 40 stocks to a post. Confirmation is transmitted by a reverse process back to San Francisco, the whole transaction often occupying no more than a minute. Picture captions. An order form of the type regularly used by brokers. Note that time of receipt is very clearly stamped. Telltale records time of order, avoiding dispute. A. Translux ticker. B. Broker's booth. C. Ticker operator. D. Conducting a sale. E and G. Trading posts. F. Call money desk. H. Messengers. I. Dealer in odd lots. Automobile Magic: How Your Car is Built. A picture story of mechanical wonders inside an auto factory, where steel is almost human. Popular Science Monthly, January 1927. Long life for your car depends, first of all, on careful tests in the chemical and metallurgical laboratories to check the chemical composition and physical properties of the materials that go into it. Every motor car is born in the foundry, where white-hot molten iron from a cupola furnace is poured from ladles into casting molds. After cooling, the castings are cleaned with a sandblast, carefully inspected, and transported to the machine shop, where powerful machines, operating almost automatically, do the necessary tuning, boring, drilling, and grinding. With a few crushing blows, this giant hammer forges a piece of intensely hot alloy steel into a crankshaft or front axle. Notice the deep concrete foundation built to withstand the blow of 12,000 pounds. Mammoth presses convert flat sheets of steel into fenders, doors, body panels, and similar parts. Other presses form the axle housing, brake drums, and even the entire front wheel hub. In fashioning an automobile engine from a casting, all cylinders are bored at once, then polished or honed to fine smoothness. They must be accurate to within 1/1000th of an inch. Another machine drills holes for the valve lifters and valves, and finishes the valve seats. The engines next are assembled on moving conveyors, each workman being skilled in quick, accurate performance of one particular operation. Afterward, the finished engines are tested on their own power on special stands. The sturdy pressed steel frame is the foundation on which the chassis is built. Workmen are seen here riveting running board brackets to the frame, which then is enameled and baked in an oven. To the steel frame are bolted the axles, with springs and wheels attached and tires mounted. How these are brought together in the second stage of chassis assembly is pictured below. Notice how the wheels are conveyed to within easy reach of the assembler on an inclined track. Down a conveyor comes the engine. A crane swings it into place on the frame. While the completed chassis move along constantly on assembly conveyors beneath, an overhead monorail conveyor lowers the upholstered bodies upon them through openings in the ceiling. Expert assemblers swiftly and dexterously apply the various parts as the chassis move always forward past them. Complete except for headlights and license plates, the finished car finally rolls out of the factory under its own power. It is then given a road test on a special track for a final tuning up, and sent out with a clean bill of health, ready for a buyer. Propose 88-story skyscraper for New York. Popular Science Monthly, March 1925. How an 88-story office building would tower above the Woolworth Building, now tallest in the world, and other skyscrapers of New York, has been visualized here by our artist, using an extraordinary air view of Lower Manhattan as a basis of comparison. Such a building, rising 33 stories above the Woolworth Tower, shown just to the left of it, now is being discussed by eminent architects and engineers as a possibility of the future. An interesting phase of this discussion concerns the problematical engineering difficulties to be encountered in going so high above the loftiest structure so far attempted by man. The new building would be about 1,250 feet high, or nearly a quarter of a mile, assuming that the floors would be similar in height to those of the Woolworth Building. This would make it 250 feet higher than the Eiffel Tower in Paris, the highest structure of any kind in the world, and about 460 feet higher than the Woolworth Building. Engineers point out that exhaustive tests would have to be made to determine not only the usual stresses and strains of such a structure, but also the strain caused by resistance to the wind. When the Woolworth Building was finished, tests made in an 80-mile gale to determine what effect wind pressure had on it showed that the building was unaffected by the strain. But just how much stronger a building half again as high would have to be to withstand the pressure of a hurricane is one of the problems that would have to be worked out carefully. To this end, a detailed study of the reactions of New York skyscrapers during heavy blows is reported to be in progress. The findings may determine whether a mammoth building such as that pictured above will prove practical. A luxurious hotel on wheels. Barbershops and soda fountains are provided in new type of railway car. Popular Science Monthly, July 1926. This new type of railway car provides all the luxuries of the modern hotel for the traveler by rail. Within a total length of 83 feet, these remarkable cars, 10 of which have been built for the Northern Pacific, provide lounge rooms, card rooms, shower baths for both men and women, a fully equipped soft drink parlor, a barbershop, valet service, and observation platform. Startling innovations in railway car design were necessary to provide space for so many luxuries. Ordinary car doors and steps have been eliminated. The only entrance to the car is by way of the Pullman to which it is coupled. The space ordinarily used for vestibules is put to other service. The shower baths are supplied by an air pressure water system with tanks of 350 gallons capacity. Great pains have been taken to get rid of any similarity in appearance to ordinary chair cars. The seats in the lounge rooms and all of the decorations are individual in design. Each lounge contains a phonograph, library, and other comforts. And for a final touch of luxury, a powerful electric searchlight has been fitted over the observation platform, making sightseeing possible at night. Marvels of the electric home. How new inventions utilize electric light, heat, and power in every room of the house. Popular Science Monthly, March 1926. Electricity is changing our homes so swiftly and yet so smoothly that the younger generation today can scarcely conceive of homes as they were 30 years ago. One marvelous device after another has been imagined, invented, and perfected. One irksome household task after another has been lightened or eliminated. The electric washer and ironer are producing a new race of laundry girls, young, trim girls who wash by machine only. The vacuum cleaner has brought order out of the annual chaos of spring house cleaning. The electric refrigerator promises to make the Iceman a picturesque memory. Electricity cools us, warms us, and cooks our food. Every nation has its ideal home. In the electrical home, it seems, America has found its own ideal. Partly responsible for this is our lack of groove-bound traditions, partly the activity of our scientists, electrical men, and inventors. At least the ideal we are offering the world is something entirely new, that of a home beautiful and comfortable, but above all, easy to run. It is not often given to inventors and scientists to see the direct fruits of their labors so strikingly benefiting their own generation. Even more inspiring is the thought that there are countless electrical inventions yet to be made. In the picture, our artist has suggested a few of the ways that electrical invention is changing traditional methods of doing household tasks. Even the children play with electric toys, while the housewife vacuum cleans to radio music. Every room has benefited by electricity's service of light, heat, and power. Car makes 207 miles an hour. Giant 1,000 horsepower auto demonstrates new racing principles. By H.C. Davis. Popular Science Monthly, June 1927. I was going so fast I couldn't look at the speedometer. To guide the car, I had to focus my eyes half a mile ahead. If I had looked at the dial for an instant, I might have lost control. I didn't know the car had made 200 until after the run. The British speed king, Major H.O.D. Seagrave, was describing his recent experience in driving his mammoth Sunbeam racer, the Mystery S, over the sands of Daytona Beach, Florida, for a world's record of 207.01 miles an hour. The real marvel of the Mystery S, however, is not the record itself, but the marvelous way science overcame the mechanical problems presented by the demands of unprecedented speed. Chiefly, the conquest of wind resistance through its immense power plant and its body design. Wind resistance, of course, increases in far greater ratio than the increase of speed. To double speed requires an engine not twice as powerful, but 8 times as powerful. Seagrave's car was driven by two 12-cylinder engines, each developing 500 horsepower. About half of this power was needed to overcome wind resistance, which at 200 miles an hour amounted to almost half a ton. To the same end, the wheels of the car were hidden under a smooth, blunt-nosed body of radically different design. This projected the air upward instead of against the wheels and axles, as in the conventional type of speed car with pointed radiator. The pilot's head was the only object exposed. Tires, too, played a vital part. The builders spent 18 months developing tires that would last for 3 minutes at 200 miles an hour. If a tire had blown out, the pilot would probably have been killed instantly. It is a freak car, and Seagrave says it will never be driven again, but it has served its purpose. Besides demonstrating that the present orthodox design of motor car can make 200 miles an hour, it has shown where improvements must be made. The present design of brakes, for example, proved wholly unsatisfactory, the terrific heat generated causing the metal to melt. Seagrave's record is the fastest man has traveled on land. The steam locomotive record is 120 miles an hour. The airplane record is 278. Not so far ahead of Seagrave's 207. Will man ever travel faster on land than that? The British visitors predicted that within 18 months, an American manufacturer would build a car that would break the record made by the Mystery S. New U.S. Zeppelin to cross Atlantic. Popular Science Monthly, August 1923. This recent photograph shows the giant Zeppelin ZR-3 nearing completion at Friedrichshafen on the Lake of Constance, Germany, for early delivery to Uncle Sam in accordance with the reparations agreement. On its trip to the United States, it will be manned by a German crew. Aeronautical experts are awaiting eagerly the opportunity to compare its performance with that of the great airship ZR-1, now nearing completion at Lakehurst, New Jersey. Note the immense size of the ZR-3 as compared with the spectators on the ground underneath. One of the most ingenious of recent proposals for mooring airships is the invention, by John Mason of Cape May City, New Jersey, of a floating hangar and landing field adapted for use on either land or water. Its chief advantage lies in the fact that it swings head to the wind, thus reducing wind interference and landing a dirigible safely. The illustration at left shows the land hangar and how it swings about on turnable tracks. It is divided into 3 sections with separable platform units. The main or head section has a conical hood in which the nose of the airship is anchored. Adapted for water use, the landing hangar rests on pontoons. The head section, with its conical hood, ends in a pointed bow like that of a ship. Anchored at the bow, the entire structure naturally swings head into the wind. The diagram at the right shows how the airship is moored. On each side of the platform deck formed by the pontoon sections is a series of masts. Between opposite masts, flat, flexible slings are suspended, passing under the hull of the airship in the form of a cradle. The airship is held fast in this cradle by cables extending vertically from the sides of the hull to mooring rings on the platform deck. A wireless station is mounted at the top of the conical hood. Why your money is safe in a bank. Popular Science Monthly, October 1926. An expert safecracker wouldn't have a chance to break his way into a modern bank vault, even if he possessed complete plans of the strong room. In the drawings on this page showing the massive construction and ingenious arrangement of the vaults in two of our greatest banks, our artist graphically shows the reason why. Whenever money is to be transferred to or from the bank, it is transported in heavily armored motor cars manned by machine gunners. The short distance between the car and the bank entrance is heavily guarded. In repelling any attack of invaders, these great strongholds that safeguard your money offer a triple line of defense. First of all, the vicinity of the vault is patrolled by armed watchmen, guards, and detectives. Second, electricity stands always ready as a swift courier to flash an alarm that will summon help in case of attack. And finally, the vault itself is a veritable fortress of special alloy steel, which will withstand the most powerful weapons which cracksmen can employ. Tough inner and outer walls and massive steel doors that are locked and unlocked by two different sets of men make the repository virtually impregnable. As supplementary precautions, there have been installed such deadly devices as projectors of live steam, which, if necessity arose, could turn the interior of the vault into a terrible cauldron, where it would be impossible for a human being to survive. Now you can talk across the Atlantic. New system assures two-way conversation. By Edwin Ketchum. Popular Science Monthly, July 1925. If someday in the next half year or so, you lift your telephone receiver from the hook and hear the operator say, "Just a moment, please, London wants you," don't laugh and hang up the receiver in the belief that someone is playing a joke on you. If you do, the joke will be decidedly on yourself. For direct two-way telephone connection between the interior of the United States and the interior of England even now is an accomplished fact. And within a few months, calling up London or the continent from any part of this country will be no more remarkable than calling New York from Chicago is now. For several years, secret experiments have been in progress to bring about two-way commercial telephone service between this and the Eastern Hemisphere. The experiments have been successful, and facilities will soon be available for the inland telephone subscriber on either side of the Atlantic to make transoceanic calls. Both radio and wire telephony are employed. A man in Georgia, say, desiring to call London, would merely signal his local exchange operator. The operator would put through the call over land telephone lines to a radio transmitting station on the coast. Their connection would be made between the telephone line and the radio transmitter, and the message would be carried over the Atlantic on the ether. On the English coast, a radio station would receive the message and transmit it over telephone lines to the person called. Since England is connected with the continent by telephone, calls could be made to Paris or other European cities. The radio stations, of course, would operate both transmitting and receiving apparatus for transatlantic calls, so that two-way communication would be established as over an ordinary telephone line. Transatlantic telephone conversations have been successfully carried on by this method at various times within the last few weeks, according to advices from England. The American Telephone and Telegraph Company has had telephone service of a sort to Great Britain for the last 2 years. That is, messages could be sent to England by radio, then delivered by telephone to any part of Great Britain. England, however, had no apparatus for sending messages to us. Now, though, the British Post Office is building a high-power radio station at Rugby, which, with the Radio Corporation station at Rocky Point, make transatlantic telephone service a convenience that will be available to all of us soon. How the High Flyers Climb. Popular Science Monthly, December 1927. Our artist illustrates here the clothing and equipment of an altitude flyer out for a record jaunt above the clouds. The information on which the pictures are based was supplied by the Materials Division of the U.S. Army Air Corps. The pilot faces blasts of air as cold as 83 below zero. He cannot breathe it, for it contains too little oxygen. Between his lips is a tube from a tank of liquid oxygen, rapidly flashing into gas under the reduced pressure. The engine carburetor's lungs gasp for air. A supercharger crowds it in. At great heights, the pilot's senses are dimmed. Automatic instruments, the recording thermometer and the recording barometer or barograph, must bring back whatever record he has made. 2 barographs are sealed before the takeoff by a representative of the International Aeronautical Federation, world governing body of air records. When the machine descends, the barographs are unsealed, and the height attained is computed. The large picture shows altitude pilot with plane and equipment. In the thin upper atmosphere, the supercharger, shown in oval, whirls 20,000 times a minute, giving the engine air at sea level pressure. Against temperature as low as 83 below zero, exhaust-heated stove in the oblong warms the cockpit. Gelatin on 4-ply goggles in circle prevents ice forming on them. At bottom left and right are instruments that record atmospheric conditions, indicating altitude. Beauty made to order by machine. Popular Science Monthly, September 1923. A coat of sunburn while you wait. From Paris comes this new appliance. Powerful reflectors bathe the skin and hair with ultraviolet rays, said to produce a glorious vacation tan in a few minutes. It is claimed the rays also nourish the hair. Medusa? Curls that stay curled are produced by this electrical permanent waver, an entirely new beauty device. First, the hair is wound on curling rods, moistened with the permanent wave lotion, then wound with flannel, until little pipe stems stick out all over the head. These are inserted in hermetically sealed heating tubes, suspended from a chandelier, as shown above. After steaming for 7 minutes, the hair is unwound and shampooed, and there are the coveted curls. Curls for a week. At the right is the latest machine for drying delicately the water waves that make the hair a sea of curling billows for a week. These waves are formed by moistening the hair with water. Dunce cap? No, it's a beauty cap. The newest invention for drying the scalp and skin after the hair has been waved. An electric heater and blower circulate warm air through the pipe and into the cap, where it thoroughly dries the scalp of the beauty patient. Steel highways under Hudson. Giant twin tubes will accommodate 46,000 automobiles daily. Popular Science Monthly, July 1926. One of the most marvelous engineering feats of our day is rapidly approaching completion. Within a few weeks, the Great Holland Tunnel for vehicular traffic under the Hudson River will be ready for its first tests. Within a year, it is expected to be in full operation, accommodating 46,000 cars a day. The drawing on this page graphically shows this stupendous work. There are 2 tubes, one for New Jersey-bound traffic, the other for New York-bound. These tubes are 15 feet apart under the river, and the outside diameter of each is a little more than 29 feet. Some idea of their size may be gained from the fact that the interior of each is big enough to permit a 2.5-story house to be drawn through it. In the cross-section in the upper right-hand corner may be seen the internal construction of the tubes. The roadway is 20 feet wide, and there is a 3-foot sidewalk. Fresh air is supplied from beneath the roadway through openings on the side 15 feet apart. Overhead, the gases are sucked up through slots and drawn out by ventilating stations, of which there are 4. 2 of these are for the under-river tubes, and 2 for the land parts. Spacious plazas will take care of the traffic on both sides of the river. The drawing shows in detail plans for those on the New York side. The underground land entrances and exits will be more than half a mile long on each side of the river. Voting by Machine: One Way to Ensure an Honest Election, by Raymond Francis Yates. Popular Science Monthly, November 1920. How much do election frauds cost this country every year? The figure has never been made known. It would probably run well into the millions. Our election laws make fraud easy. There is one case on record where the investigation and correction of fraud required an expenditure of $80,000 and 4 years' time. Who paid the cost? The taxpayers, of course. The ballot method of election ought to be extinct in a mechanical age. We Americans are prone to boast of our mechanical ingenuity and to forget that we have an election system that was old in Caesar's time. The mere existence of the cash register and adding machine ought to make us ashamed of our election system. The voting machine ensures honest elections. The average American feels very important when he goes into the election booth to cast his vote, understanding, as he does, that he is discharging one of his most sacred duties as a citizen. Yet, while an election officer is unfolding the ballots, he may accidentally tear a few. If he is clever, he may have a small piece of lead concealed under one of his fingernails. He can do one of 2 things with this lead. He can mark a ballot in a way that will render it void, or he can place a cross next to the name of a man who was not voted for. He may decide to punch a hole through the ballot with his pencil point, which would at once invalidate the vote. There are numerous other tricks to deprive an honest voter of his vote. Comparatively few people know that it is possible to sell their votes. How would the politicians know that they had delivered the goods, you say? Most states provide a space for the voter to vote for persons not nominated. It is perfectly legal for the voter to vote for himself. If John Jones sells his vote to one of the parties, the ballot he used in voting can be identified by the name in the space allotted for it. This is simple enough and perfectly legal. The ballot laws actually encourage this practice. In the few states where no such provision is made on the ballots, other methods of identification are in use. Some states provide that the ballots must be folded in a certain way to be legal. When they are folded in this way, the marks show through the paper. The ballot can be rendered invalid by the slightest mark. A cross, a single line, no matter how short, added to the ballot nullifies it. Election officers often take advantage of this fact in eliminating as many votes as possible belonging to the other party. At one time, it was the practice on the east side of New York to throw ballot boxes into the river. Stuffing the ballot box is a merry game. Under the voting laws, each voter is entitled to 1 vote only. What is going to prevent more than 1 ballot from being placed in the box under one voter's number? The law? The law does not prevent ballots from mysteriously finding their way into the boxes. This fact is so generally known that laws have been made that state what disposition is to be made of votes cast in this illegal manner. If all the voters were honest, or if all the election officers were honest and watchful, stuffing might be impossible. One of the serious defects of the present voting system is the opportunity it offers for illegal practices. While the opportunity for cheating exists, honest elections will be unpopular with those in charge. The ballot system is costly and grossly inefficient. In the larger cities, the cost of an election runs well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Each election district must be officered by men who receive from $6 to $12 for their day's work. After the election is over, the votes must be counted by hand, a long, laborious task, pregnant with the danger of mistakes. As long as the counting of votes is done by hand, an unreliable method of election will exist that cannot be more honest or trustworthy than the persons conducting it. Many attempts have been made to perfect a machine or device that will make the mechanical registration of votes possible. While there are certain problems in connection with the perfection of a reliable machine, there is no reason why it could not have been done many years ago. The adding machine had its birth in the 15th century. It paved the way for the voting machine, but several centuries rolled by before the voting machine actually came into being. During the last half-century, many attempts were made to bring voting to a mechanical basis, but few of these held any promise of success. A man in Baltimore invented a machine with which votes were registered by rolling small balls into channels provided for each voter. At the end of an election, it was necessary only to count the balls. When the machine was tested, a few hoodlums put chewing gum in it and wrecked the election. Another man proposed registering votes by having the voter punch holes in paper. This also passed out of existence. Rochester, New York was one of the first cities in this country to try voting machines. That was in 1878. The city is still using them. Not only this, but 65% of the voting in New York State is done by this method. The complete returns of a large city can be made known within 1 hour after the polls close. In the city of Niagara Falls, where the voting machine has been in use a number of years, the returns of the election are made known and the extras printed and on the streets for sale within 45 minutes. In Buffalo, a city of over 500,000 population, the election returns are made public 1 hour after the polls close. This voting machine is strictly a mechanical device. It operates with mathematical accuracy. Before the voter can cast his ballot, he must pull the curtain of the machine about him with a handle provided for the purpose. This ensures a secret ballot. The act also unlocks the machine. When the curtain is opened, the machine is relocked and cannot be manipulated. After the voter pulls the curtain about him, he sees before him a board on which the names of the candidates of the various parties are arranged in rows. The Republican Party occupies one row, the Democratic Party another, etc. Over the name of each voter is a small lever. It is necessary only to throw this lever down to vote for a candidate. If the voter desires to vote a straight ticket, he has only to pull down all the levers in the party row. Levers are also provided to vote yes or no on questions. When the voter has thrown the levers down over his candidates, he pulls the curtain back and steps out. While the curtain conceals the voter, he may make any changes he desires, since the vote is not registered until he pulls the curtain back and departs. It is possible only to cast one vote for each office. For instance, when one candidate for mayor is voted for, the lever over the other candidates for the mayoralty are automatically locked and cannot be operated until the other lever is lifted, in case a change is desired. But can't someone open the back of the machine and change the registered number for any candidate? When the machine is in use, the back doors are locked, and they cannot be opened even with the keys provided for the purpose. On the other hand, when the back of the machine is opened to read the result, the levers on the front are inoperative. There is also a counter on the machine that registers every time the back doors of the machine are opened. A counter also registers every time the curtains are pulled together, thereby keeping a record of the number of votes cast. When the election is over, a seal is placed on the locking device of the curtain, and the seal cannot be removed until the next election without detection. Plot and plan, scheme and engineer as he may, the crooked ward heeler cannot discover a way of cheating the machine. After the election, the machine is placed in a strong packing case and sealed up until the following year. The machine is honest, and its honesty is fully protected from those who would destroy it. Voting mechanically greatly reduces election costs. The number of clerks in each district and the number of election districts are reduced. This is made possible by the rapidity with which the voters are handled. Hence, more voters can be crowded into a district. In the city of Buffalo, the number of election districts was reduced from 150 to 108 after the introduction of the voting machine. This reduced the election costs $14,000 a year, besides eliminating fraud. Expensive recounts and contests are avoided through the use of machines. In the case of a recount, it is necessary merely to remove the machines from their cases and recopy the results. The dictum of the machine is absolutely final. This avoids expensive contests in the courts, where long and costly litigation often results. And here's a bonus photo I found in a magazine. You get a bonus point if you can tell me in the comments what magazine it came from. Well, have a good day or night, everyone.